Good evening and welcome to The Problem of Being Awake. My name's Ben and I'll be your host. And this is number 6 of the Armchair Monologue, the series I'm doing, and the subject to this is the subconscious brain and how it works. For instance, not many people know that actually in brain mapping, which is where you put a sophisticated helmet on your brain and it can detect electrical impulses, every word ticks the same electrical impulse in every human being. But there's no, it's not like they're similarly, they're all millions mapped around the whole of the brain. But the word yes, the word no, the word hike, the word long, the word throw, the word anything, whatever you want, it always hits the same neurological electrical note. And that's fascinating. And that's leading to what's going to come out soon, which is an absolute tourist brilliant idea, is a translator. So you speak in English into it, and then you press the other language you want. You just press a button, and it speaks back to the other person in their home tongue what you just said, completely fluently, and with colloquialisms as well. So it'll be amazing. But what we really want to do, this is a long form discussion where I discuss the subconscious mind in detail. I'm a retired psychologist. I had to retire after an accident 4 years ago. And so I like to try and give back a bit of that still through some of my videos. So the subconscious mind, it's a fascinating aspect of our character that's so misunderstood, and so little is understood about it, yet it is majestic, and quite like the almost the deep riches of the sea. We don't know what's under there. We don't know what's really happening. We're breaking the surface and we're finding mysterious things. Like your brain, your subconscious brain processes 15 million bits of information per person per second through the five senses, predominantly through the eyes. And the conscious brain processes 7 bits per person per second. So 15 million per person per second for the subconscious, 7 for the conscious brain. And the way I look at that is, imagine the world's biggest cruise liner that went back for 100 miles or 1,000 miles. I can only just guess to make the metaphor work. The conscious mind is the captain. So your subconscious mind is there to house everything that's ever experienced, and every individual has a memory in their subconscious mind of everything they've experienced. Doesn't mean you can call it to the fore, but if you use your mind in a way that you want to make your memory, you want to do mnemonic exercises, it'll be amazing how many memories you can actually store. Some people can do some amazing things if you choose it as a discipline. But what the subconscious does predominantly is filter the information first. So these will resonate. I like to talk in metaphors. So there's 3 primary filters that everything is run through well before it reaches your conscious mind. So here's a thought, and that comes from your conscious mind, and I'm talking about the input that leads to that thought, which is way longer. It's done in a microsecond, but it's way longer than you'd think. So deletion is the obvious one. Now, you weren't aware of the feeling in your left foot until I just said so. And the reason for that is it wasn't relevant to you. It wasn't irrelevant information. Your brain's deemed it irrelevant. And that's it. Generalization is the second one. Best example of that is opening a door. You don't study doors. You don't approach each door with any kind of trepidation or anxiety or desire to achieve the opening of it. You open and close doors. Generalization. Also, generalization explains why you will do some journeys in your car that you do regularly, and sometimes you'll feel like, oh, I can't even remember driving. And you think you maybe even had that feeling, felt guilty, like you weren't paying attention. And it's not that, it's that you've driven that journey so many times, it's generally your commute, that your subconscious takes over as a sort of autopilot. But all of its senses are aware, and I explained the difference in the processing speed. So if someone were to run out in front of your car and you were in that mode, immediately the signals would pick into your conscious mind to put on the brakes. So never worry if that happens to you. You would have been nothing if you'd needed to be engaged in the driving. You would have been microsecond engaged in the driving. The subconscious will ram that straight into your head. It's also responsible for housing thoughts and emotions, and here's where we sort of get the third primary filter, which is distortion. Now, distortion is a big one for all of us, really. Every piece of information we have is distorted because it's run through every experience we've ever had. It's run through our belief systems, our value systems, and it comes out the other end. So whatever thought, no two people can think the exact same thought. No two people can look at the same image from exactly the same angle, even with the same eyes, and see exactly the same thing, because the subconscious is so specific that 8 billion people on Earth will see 8 billion different images. Almost all look identical to the human eye, but not identical actually in colour. So it's distortion. Here's a great example. If you're in love, you'll notice couples holding hands. You'll notice things that speak of love. If you're not, if you've just been broken up with or whatever, your marriage has ended, then you'll see arguments and you'll see tensions and you'll see couples and you'll probably think that they don't look like they're having fun. And that's based on the rule of perception is projection. What you see is what's inside you, because your brain, and your subconscious, is looking for the things that affirm the way you feel. I hate to use the word affirm because it's used awfully today in terms of gender transition, but to affirm the way you feel, your brain will search for backup data to sort of verify that love exists, for instance, or to verify that everyone's miserable, for instance. So the best example there is one woman's just got divorced and her best friend's just got engaged. They go to lunch and they talk. They have the same exact lunch, and if you filmed it, you would not have any differences or discrepancies. But when they get home, the one who's in love will say to her partner, to be her fiance, that she's really down on our relationship and really down on the idea of me getting married. I don't know what's wrong with her. And the person who's recently divorced will go and see a friend and she'll say, she just had to rub it in my face, didn't she? The fact she's getting married. She knows I'm getting divorced. Just she did it deliberately. These are real things where if you understand the human brain and how it goes wrong, you can kind of get to work at making it go right. And distortion is a big one because every piece of information we have that it even comes close to entering our conscious mind has been distorted by our life experiences from birth to now. Now, it's we all we know is that we don't. I mean, we can't say from birth to now, but we can kind of say from like 4 years old to now, and we can presume from birth because it's an insane amount of data. It's like a computer and RAM is RAM memory for a computer. So it's like a computer where we're using like 2% of the RAM. We don't really know how much it is. They say 8% of the brain. It's not quite that, and it's not an exact thing. But partially, parts of the brain are there to be repaired because of damaged brain cells. Most people, by the time they reach 40s, they will have damaged a lot of brain cells, depending on their lifestyle, but still damage them. You can't go through without. So they need replenishing. So that's a solid theory. There are other theories which are a bit more like people who used to be able to levitate and things, and I'm not interested in that. But distortion is definitely something that we always want to look at. Who's distorting what, and are we both obviously distorting, but what are we feeling when we're distorting? Because if you can understand that the distortion of what's inputting to your brain and then what your thought about it is, that's been distorted by your own brain, and the person who's saying whatever they're saying or the input they're having in an argument has also been distorted by their own brain, then you can kind of make peace a lot quicker. I mean, a great example would be I look after my elderly mother, and because she's got massive pain permanently in her foot, and on bad days she takes it out on me. Now I know that what I've said to her, she's distorted through a body that's in physical pain, which means it's very difficult for her to get a positive response out because she's feeling that pain. The brain feels the pain. That's it. We know it. Signals up and down the body into the brain, which feels pain. Brain doesn't want to give a good response when it's feeling pain. So naturally people lash out when they don't really mean to or at the wrong target. And it's crucial to remember that, because that will explain a lot of situations in your life. Now, there are 12 sub-filters to all those 3 filters. I won't go into them, but they basically cover every aspect of what you believe, what you hold true, what you know to be true, your values systems, and your ideas and your kind of your lower level thought existence. And your thoughts are transferred by your subconscious into your subconscious brain. And here's why, although the subconscious is marvelous and it's not spoken about enough in modern psychology, it was the basis of Jung and Freud. So it's, people talk about CBT. CBT is very, very effective if you have a situational mental health problem. So let's say you've got situational depression or situational anxiety, and I'm not going to say that diminish the symptoms at all. The symptoms can be absolutely devastating. I think probably the worst example of situational depression is inside of grief. Very hard to counsel people in grief, and you should never really try and intervene within the first year, obviously depending on how close they were to that person. But if it's a real loved one, blood, lived with, relative, parent, daughter, brother, sister, no. Leave it a year before any therapist intervenes. If a grief therapist wants to intervene before that, they're not operating with proper moral ethics as a therapist. And lots of them do. However, after a year, if someone's still grieving heavily, and there are some things that people can't fully recover from, but if there's no sign of any recovery after a year, it would be appropriate to suggest some kind of grief therapy to a friend. So obviously that's situational. So CBT is often prescribed for most mental health disorders, and it's all that the government can do. Now, there are good CBT therapists, and they're really good CBT therapists. I mean, Jordan Peterson would be one of the best in the world. My mentor and my regular therapist, because you have to have a therapist if you're in therapy. The things you hear, I was a PTSD therapist predominantly, so the things you just got to have a therapist to get that off your chest and get yourself in order and keep yourself in order. It's a hard job. So yeah, she's one of the best CBT therapists in the country. And she's great because what it does is if you have a situational condition, then it is actions and your actions which will then transform your thoughts more positively, and you then lead you to take another positive action, then transform more positive thought and continue up that ladder. And that's the entirety of CBT. That is a very brief description of it. It can be very powerful, and those steps and climbs up the ladder to get to the end result of being contented again can be very challenging, but it's a very effective thing for situational people who have clinical conditions like clinical depression, clinical anxiety, panic disorders, PTSD, things like that. I've always found work with the subconscious is far more effective at providing relief for those conditions, with a caveat that when I did trauma therapy, I never hypnotized anybody, because I've got a title, it's master hypnotist, horrible title. I'm a hypnotherapist. I love doing it. I could do a demonstration right now. I might actually do it in a sec. But one thing to know about hypnotism, you can't be hypnotized to do something against your own will. You cannot. So people who dance like a chicken on stage, it's because there are lots of people watching the audience looking for the most suggestible people, and they can tell that because of their training. So I've got that training. I can tell you who's most suggestible by looking at people's body language, and they get their person up on hypnotism, and they get them to dance like a chicken. Now, the reason they get them to do that is because they've never had a particular value or belief system associated with dancing with a chicken. But if you ask them under hypnosis to get out their phone and call their mum, tell them they love them, they'll do it if they do love their mum. But if you ask them to call them, they hate them. They'll wake up out of the trance immediately. They'll remember what you said and they'll ask you why. So there's no danger with hypnotism, but it's very effective for anxiety-based disorders. Clinical depression is hard to manage because it does require a bit of both. It requires a very eclectic therapeutic mix to manage it correctly, and a lot of that is homework to help to work on that. So I'm going to move on. That's how the functioning works. It's a very big supercomputer that we don't use efficiently, and the more efficiently you can learn to use it, the better your thought life will be. And life is in your thoughts. You have no other way of expressing life or experiencing life except by thought. So let's talk a bit about how to promote positive thoughts. I mean, it's the kind of route to all but salvation if you can continue to do it. Now, I will say you can't continue to do it. Like stress is not mandatory. There's never any mandatory reason for stress, and I've seen people let go of immense stress so quickly, but I've never seen anyone let go of stress as an idea completely and manage to keep it. I cite a great example. One day I was running a small mail order business thing, and I was just a golf clubs, and I was just going to my drop-off point, and the driver had come early. Ordinarily, I'd call up, rant and rave, try and get him to come back, find out he couldn't, have to drive to the depot and drop him off. On this day, clear as a bell, it was a nice day. It was 3 in the afternoon. The depot's only a half an hour round trip. I just went, calm down, click on some music, and just drive down there. No problem. And that's happened to me 1,000 times since. So it's easy. You can't say to someone, don't be stressed. No one else can de-stress you. You can de-stress yourself, because everybody who stresses, they're stressed about something that's been or something that's coming. They're not stressed about exactly what's happening now. Worrying is not stress. There's a big difference. Stress is getting overly stressed out. Worrying is part of life, unfortunately, but no cure for that. But stress is optional. Someone can say the worst thing in the world to you, and you can choose to not let it ruin your day. And if you choose to not let things ruin your day, like I had an argument with my father at lunchtime, no, didn't let it ruin my day, and in fact walked away and left him where he was. I got a taxi home because it was quite contentious, and I wasn't prepared to be spoken to like that. But I wasn't. I'm particularly working on myself at the moment, so I wasn't, prepared to get into an argument about nothing. And certainly arguments are about nothing. So here's some good tips on how to first promote calm within your body. So I'm going to say something that no one's going to want to hear, and it's meditation. And meditation it's fine. There are lots of apps, and people do apps, and that's great. I mean, the best meditation is eventually working out your own silent-based way of meditating, but something to do to chill you out. So there are breathing exercises. My one specifically I use to calm down, because uptime states, so states of being like anxiety, fear, but also exhilaration, joy, are all uptime states. And quite often when you're bad, you're in an uptime state. So that takes more oxygen it takes more oxygen to be angry than it does to be calm or sad or whatever. So you've got calmness, contentment, fulfillment is on that lower scale, but you've also got sadness, depression, and everything. So it's a mixed bag. But oxygen's the key. Now this is what I've learned. If you deprive the body of oxygen, just as you breathe out, you expel every bit of your breath until you get a physical reminder from your lungs that you require more oxygen, and then you immediately take a deep breath. You very slowly exhale that breath, until you've really reached no oxygen levels, and then as soon as your body naturally, don't try and hold your breath, as soon as your body naturally just gives you the slightest physical impetus to say you need to take another breath, you take another breath. If you do that for 5 minutes, you'll find you've calmed down from pretty much anything. The other thing is a shortcut from EDMR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprogramming, which is what I did as a PTSD therapist. And I had a machine, it's a big machine, lots of lights, headphones, beeper, all that sort of thing. But I actually worked out it's better to do it for, personally and tactily, so with actual physical contact. So I used to tap on people's kneecaps. Now, the reason for that is, and I can do a metaphor here as well. So the brain hemispheres are both useful, both engage at different times for different things. But the stimulation regularly on left and right is not regular. It's not supposed to happen at that kind of speed. I'm not talking about, like super speed. Like, it doesn't matter going too fast, but just like 1 second, 1 second, 1 second, 1 second. And that's why walking and people who run, that's actually the secret to why they have a better quality of mental health life. It's because that's constantly happening. Problems develop inside your brain. Now, inside the two hemispheres, there's something called the line of neuroplasticity. And inside that, there's basically, I use the metaphor. A problem is a little person, be you a man or a woman, whatever. It doesn't matter. But imagine they want to take root in your brain. They want to build a house. And eventually, if you let them, they'll build an extension, a jacuzzi, a pool, a tennis court, and an entire estate. But if you don't, and this is how you can deprogram even those traumatized people with this, just by tapping them on the knees while they retell the story. That little man is then forced to cross over this line of neuroplasticity, and it acts like a swamp. So all you need to know is that what would happen to a man who had to cross a swamp only to cross it back again and back again and back again and back again. Has to give up, has to get tired, and goes away. So those are two great techniques for promoting calm. Now, here are some good techniques for promoting happiness, good thought life, good positive thoughts. Sing on a regular basis. You don't need to be good. Singing in the shower is great because of the acoustics. It releases the highest quality of verbal based neurochemicals you can. Whistling and humming do the same thing, but to a lesser degree. You've then got dancing. Now, actual dancing for a little bit a day really helps your mental health. Even just the one song a day, just dance to it. Really, really does help. But even, just tapping away. And if you're in a really bad place, these are some things I'd recommend. Make every movement a bit of a dance. So use your hips when you move and try and do economy of movement. So use the least movement possible. It will make the brain respond with those same chemicals as if you were actually dancing, if you just sort of swing your hips and get a bit limber as you move. The other thing, really good, is make phone calls. The ones you don't want to make, the ones to the credit card company, the ones to, the DVLA, the DMV, whatever it is. And make sure you're really extra nice to the person you speak to. And if you've got a joke that and you tell well, ask them if you can tell them a joke. And if they say yes, tell the joke and you make them laugh. And there's a transactional value there's in that. And I won't go into the whole, I haven't got time to go into the whole basis of that, but the transactional value in that is that when you make other people feel good, you feel good about yourself. So that builds up your self-esteem, brings up your thought life, positive thoughts. Your thought life is how you experience the world. So if you've got negative thoughts, you're going to only experience negative things. And if you have only positive thoughts, you'd only experience positive things. A mix is always there, always necessary, but positive, you can elevate. Music is very useful as well. And the final one, which I'll leave you with, is a technique which I call whispering to the world, where you set on a recorder. I now do it to a video because I'm used to making videos now, but I used to do it on audio recording. and I would talk, and it would be if I was feeling upset or anything. So if you're feeling bad, it's good. If you're weighing up a decision, it's good. If you're trying to like steamroll ideas, it's really good. So you treat it as if you're talking to the world and the world's not listening. Now you can argue that if you're giving a board meeting, for instance, imagine that you're actually talking to the board. Pick the thing that annoys you a little bit. Pick something that bugs you a little bit and start talking about that. And make sure that you keep talking about something that you know only annoys you a tiny bit, and your brain will naturally take you off because it will want to have a substantive conversation, and it knows that you're not talking about something you care about, so it will break you off into tangents, and in those tangents you can then get the benefits of your subconscious working through what it needs to work through, and your conscious brain talking it out and talking it through. Really good way to reason out problems, really good way to get your mental health back in check and positive thoughts going through, and really just useful in whenever you've got a problem, just to talk at the world and just never expect it to hear it, and you'll find your answers most of the time with that. And I'll leave it there. I hope these are applicable to you. I hope I've explained a few things you may not have known, and I hope that the advice I've given, because you can't do too much to be happy. Music, dancing, singing, it's all great, but you really, to be happy, there's no one that I'm happy enough. No, you're not. You every time, if you do things every day to promote your happiness, then your happiness would grow every day. Things will knock it back a few notches and you have to start again. And that's the beauty of the phrase. The only person you should ever try and be better than is the person you were yesterday. And that could even be, you could have suffered the worst thing in the world, and the next day you get up and you make a cup of tea, which you didn't do the day before. That qualifies as being better than when you were. So you can face life's knocks. When it knocks you down, you get back up again. And each day you try and build up better from that. And it will be a graph like this, but that's life. But the more you can promote positive thoughts, and by the way, positive affirmations work. If you say nice things about yourself to yourself in your head, it does really work. You can do that ad infinitum if you like. Some people don't necessarily like doing that. They think it's weird, but it does. It's I'm great. I'm going to be great. This is going to be fine. I'm calm. I'm relaxed. These things do work over time. I haven't researched it enough to go into it here, but I think I'm going to leave it on that. The only person you should try and be better than is the person you were yesterday, and make sure that you are reflective of who you were yesterday, because how could you then be better than that? But also, it's very good to keep a kind of daily, not a diary, but just a daily acknowledgement of how you went and what did what to you and what reactions you had from it. And then if you can do that and you can create these positive moments, and I must leave you with this. That's why I say it's good to brainstorm, because if you forget something, you bring it back. Whenever you go to a shop, say something nice to the person who's checking out and ask them a question. Be a good banal, how's your day going? And I'll tell you the reason why. Because that person may have been ignored by every customer they've seen for half an hour, and they may feel inhuman. And you've just humanized them, and that's good enough for you to go away with your transactional value of having made them feel a bit better. But you've also got the pay it forward thing, that she's probably going to be nicer to the next person who may have had the worst day in hell and is sitting in the supermarket and waiting to get home, and she's nice to him, and that makes his day. So I'll leave it there. Again, please leave comments. Let me know if you use the techniques and how they work. Please email me directly about them. I'm happy to send them out via email. Ben at the problem with being awake, all on word.co.uk and .com. So either or. You be lucky, I'll be good. I'll speak to you soon.